What's up, guys? This is a topic that I've been meaning to do pretty much almost since I started the site. This is like one of my early topics I was planning to get to. But a recent look at Wikipedia made me sort of jump on it immediately. I want to talk about the Gucci Crew 2 and specifically kind of their lesser known post-album history, which seems to be a little bit twisted online, so I want to get into that. So first of all, the Gucci Crew 2. You don't know, classic Miami-based group that came out in like 86, 87 with Gucci bass, Sally That Girl. They had a whole bunch of hit records throughout the 80s into the very early 90s. It's basically two guys, hence Gucci Crew 2. 240 Shorty and MCV, aka the Gucci Man, not to be confused with Gucci Mane or MC Holiday, who also put out records as Gucci Man, or the Gucci Boys. I mean, Gucci is all over the place in hip hop, especially in the 80s and 90s. But so anyway, Disco Rick actually kind of discovered them. I was gonna say put the group together. He didn't really put them together. I think they were already like friends or something. I don't really know their old school history. I don't know them like pre-records, but I'm pretty sure they were like friends in like, high school or whatever. They were like a duo. Disco Rick discovered them, produced them. Disco Rick, of course, Miami legend, who because Miami, we're talking about bass music, and Disco Rick, obviously put out a bunch of records by himself or with the Dogs or the Wolf Pack later on. But most of those guys were kind of just like his dancers, his glorified backup. But he was often, when not doing his own records, discovering and putting out lots of artists like Princess C, Chosen. Like that's just possibly what he's better known for almost than his own stuff. And so Gucci Crew 2, though, was kind of really what put him on the map. And obviously he put them on the map. And they had a bunch of records. And they were young guys in the beginning, obviously. But they were doing sort of kind of silly, lighthearted stuff, comedy stuff, like Sally That Girl is kind of a silly song. The Dating Game is definitely like a joke song. And, they always kind of had songs like they had Fuddy Duddy, which is a parody of Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, Lottie Dottie. They're always doing that kind of lighthearted stuff. Even their first single, Gucci Bass, isn't really like a joke song. Like, it's straightforward. It's, a bass song. But they use, like, the theme from the Smurfs in it, which makes it pretty silly and lighthearted. And everybody was doing that in the 80s. I mean, not necessarily the Smurfs, but, you think of, like, that Fresh Gordon, like, doing songs like the Foursome D's using the Gilligan's theme. So it's kind of corny. It's kind of silly. Like, you think of MC Shy D doing the Pink Panther, But it wasn't a joke, but then some of their songs definitely were a joke. And so they had a couple albums. In fact, let's get into it really specifically, because they kind of have, like, each album is almost its own era. So Def, So Fresh, So Stupid, that's their first album. This came out in 1987. This has all the early singles, The Cabbage Patch, Sally That Girl, Gucci Broke. Then, boom, What Time Is It? It's Gucci Time. That came out next in 1987/88. Then in 88, 89 comes Everybody Wants Some. Now here's where it kind of really breaks off, because they're getting a little bit more mature here, although they're still doing silly, funny songs. But after the second album, they split with Disco Rick. And in fact, if there's a song on one of Disco Rick's albums where he's like, I forget the exact quote, he's like, you make records that make people laugh. When I hear it, I want to break it in half. So he was done with the Gucci Crew 2. And for a while, the Gucci Crew 2 didn't say anything. Like, by this album is all without Disco Rick. He's out, but they don't mention it at all. Later on the next album, they do have a quick line, like, if Rick was here, I'd punch him in the face or something. But otherwise, they pretty much just went off on their own. And they definitely kind of suffered without Disco Rick's production. But they also kind of suffered, I think, just in the direction. Like, what are you going to do with these guys? Like, I can just imagine if you're, like, the manager for the Gucci Crew 2, you're one of these people, you're working the record label or you're managing them as artists. Like, they're getting older, so what should they do? Should they do joke funny songs? It's, of course, we're coming into the late 80s, 2 Live Crew and all that. We're blowing up, and Miami was so, like, okay, you got to be raunchy and nasty. No, you got to do dance songs. So I could see the instincts that kind of pull them in all different directions, and where should they go and who should they be. By the third album, like, they had a serious anti-drug song, which, like, I think called $5 High, which I think was not the direction they should have been heading in. But you can see them sort of floundering. They're always trying to show they're versatile and doing different kind of stuff, and that works for them. But at the same time, you're kind of like, well, who are the Gucci Crew 2 once you get past, like, oh, those silly guys who did, Sally That Girl. And then they came out with G4, and you can tell just by the cover, G4, like, okay, they've totally changed their image, and they're not really doing joke songs. And I remember as a kid, like, this is the one that really put me off them. This album, maybe a little bit weaker. I was still a fan. They used some kind of obvious samples, some kind of pop music kind of stuff, and it's kind of like, okay, not really for me. Like, I liked it. Just not as good as the previous albums. No real classics on there. This album, at the time, I did not like at all. I mean, I hesitate to say I hated it. I was pretty strongly against this album. It's kind of like, if you want an example of a whack album, how about Gucci Crew's G4? I haven't gone back to it in more recent years. I've definitely softened on it. I kind of like it. I can definitely still hear everything I disliked about it, and it's partially the fact that they're going for more grown-up change image, and you can see they got kind of like a New Jack Swing look and all that. You're saying, why are there 3 guys here? That's because they have now DJ Hollywood as a 3rd member. Back in the days, you'd be kind of like, what? Gucci Crew changed, there's a new guy, new look. But actually, going back to it, he's scratching his ass off on this album, and he's definitely one of the elements that, put some serious quality in here. This is like almost all dance songs. I mean, there's like a token love song. There's a few other things on here. They're still kind of being versatile, but it's largely dance songs. They've got a very consistent production style to the point where it's too consistent. Like, there's like a whole lot of short songs in this album, and it all starts to sound the same. I mean, again, except for like the love song and stuff like that, it really gets kind of redundant, and it gets to be kind of a grind, and that's definitely what put me off the album. You're like, okay, this is just boring. But when you go back and you just listen to 1 or 2 of the singles, or even any of the, like, doesn't have to be the singles, just any of the tracks, and just kind of pull them out on their own, say, okay, actually this is well produced. They're rapping pretty well on it. They got lots of cuts all over the album, so it's pretty solid. It's just kind of tough to really grind through beginning to end. So that's G4. That's 1990, and that's, for most people, where the story ends. Because they never put out any more albums after that. The crew broke up. That's it. Over, right? Obviously, many years later, MCV tragically was shot and killed. But that was in like the 2000s. That last album was 1990. So they broke up. That was kind of the end of the story. But it's not really the end. It's just sort of what's the end that made it to like popular mainstream stores. Like someone like me going and buying Gucci Crew tapes in mall in New Jersey. Okay, the door was closed. But they put out a couple more independent records, which I want to get into. And I want to get into how this has been covered, like I said, on, initially Wikipedia. But it's spread out all over the place. Like if you look at like Southern Rap Club, Radio King, like there's all these other websites, which I mean are basically scraping Wikipedia, unfortunately, and just taking it as gospel. I was reading like the Miami-based forums, and someone's like, well, if Wikipedia is to believe, this is what happened to the Gucci Crew too. And here's one of the more outlandish things, they changed their name to the Goofy Crew 2 and performed children's birthday parties. Okay, that's a claim that's in Wikipedia. By the way, all these claims in Wikipedia I'm going to reference are from like anonymous IPs, and have kind of popped up at different points over the years. Interesting for a long time, and still to this day, all this stuff is still current and is everywhere. They said, and this one isn't such a dubious claim, but they said, when MCV was shot and killed, Disco Rick is the only member who showed up at his funeral. Now, I have no comment on how true or not that is, but even Wikipedia put like citation needed, right? And then like if you look at the history of Wikipedia, you can see all the edits that went up, and at some point someone put into the text, not in like the behind the scenes talk page or something, just on the page right underneath citation needed, I was there. And that got removed automatically like a day or two later, but you can still read it. But anyway, again, I don't know if that's true, but just this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. Just something to simmer on. So let's address some of this stuff. First of all, the idea that the Gucci Crew 2 had been dropped by their label, right? Well, that's definitely not true, because they continued to put out 12-inch singles on their label, which, by the way, was their own label, Gucci Records, which was their label all the way back to 1986/7 when they first came out with Gucci Bass, Gucci Broke, Salad That Girls, all on Gucci Crew 2 Records. Or, I'm sorry, just Gucci Records, distributed by Hot Productions. It's always been that way. Maybe they weren't distributed by Hot Productions for these 12-inch singles, likely, probably, but it's always Gucci Crew Records. I mean, they couldn't have been dropped by their label because it's their own label, it's their own thing. So, they had a couple singles. Now, interesting, if you read Wikipedia, they talk about 2 singles. They said Gucci Crew 2 had 2 more singles after that, but it didn't catch on, and the end. And they named Erase Your Face and Spikin' the Funky Punch. Now, I am extremely confident those songs don't exist. Those titles are nonsense. I've tried even Googling them just by themselves, just to see if like maybe they were mixing it up, like, maybe some other obscure Miami-based group had put out 2 singles called that, and there was a mix-up. I'm pretty sure that's just pure nonsense. But there were later Gucci Crew 2 singles throughout the 90s. And we're going to start out with this one, which is kind of a half one, but we'll be thorough. We'll cover it all. So here we go. Bang. 240 Shorty, and DMS, Where the Gigolo Jig At, and Take Off Your G-String Draws. 2-song 12-inch. There's a couple mixes, but it's just a 2-song, like instrumental, clean versions. This is basically a 240 Shorty solo song. Rapping, he's the only guy rapping on here. DMF is just like the producer. And maybe DJ. There's very minimal scratches on here, but it's almost all sand scratching. Both songs are pretty good. I mean, you're kind of in that territory of G4 still. I mean, different because MCV is gone. I should point out, across all 4 albums, it's always MCV. And 240 Shorty. But I mean, there's no other members. The Gucci Crew 2, you know, Disco Rick comes and goes, Hollywood comes and goes. But the Gucci Crew 2, the 2 are always the same. That's going to change. But for all the albums, and for everybody knows, it's those 2 guys. So this album now, 1992, a single rather, 240 Shorty solo by himself. He even says it right at the beginning of the song. He's like, 240 Shorty, I'm on my own now. Something like that. That's not an exact quote, but something like that is how he starts off the song. And he raps all the verses. DMF is the producer. They're both kind of fun dance songs. Nothing brilliant. But not the same production style as G4, which is, I mean, I like that production. Like I sort of said, G4 has, the production's okay. It just gets really redundant. It's almost like every song has the same drum track. Not literally, but it's, you know, if you've heard that album, you know. But it's a fun song. It's a good song. 2 good songs. Nice little 12-inch in 1992. We don't want to spend too much time on it. Now we're getting to the last 2 records, which are by the Gucci Crew 2, straightforward, not even like the last one said, featured 2 Shorty of the Gucci Crew 2. This is now just billed as the Gucci Crew 2. But no, MCV is not back. He's been replaced by a guy named Joe Boogie. If you read the liner notes, I forget if it's this 12-inch or the next one, but one of these 12-inches, the liner notes, actually credits his real name, Latai, which is a little bit confusing because, and this used to confuse me as a kid, there's a guy named Joe Boogie in the liner notes of Gucci Crew 2 records dating all the way back to like Sally That Girl in the early days. I don't know exactly all the 12 inches he's covered on, but he's listed on a couple, including Sally for sure. And he's like an engineer mixer named Joe Boogie. As far as I know, though, that's it. He has no other association with the Gucci Crew 2. There's a new Joe Boogie, different real name, who's now joined the group after MCV has left. He's like the MCV replacement. But he's not that Joe Boogie. It's another Joe Boogie who's also in the Gucci Crew 2. Although this one's the only one who's actually in it and rapping. In fact, on this song, no, the next song, one of the songs, yeah, Slip Slide Ride, the next one, it's almost all Joe Boogie, and 240 just kind of comes on the end. Here, okay, so this song is called Shake Your Hips in the Wind. You can guess what it is. This is 1994. Features DJ Captain Crunch, produced by B-Rock, as in B-Rock in the Biz, who did like My Baby's Mama, the one that Yankee had made an answer record to and stuff like that. And he had, you know, a bunch of albums out. So he produced this. That's the thing. Like, as much as you could say anything about Gucci Crew 2, like, even as like G4, which I used to hate on back in the days, like, you have to admit, they always knew how to do quality records. And, oh, by the way, that made me think, so when you listen to these songs too, like, I was thinking at the time, oh, maybe they say, like, erase your face in the hook. Maybe, you know, Joe Boogie makes a reference to Spike and the Funky Punch in the song. And so someone who's updating Wikipedia just, like, knows the song by that phrase, even though it's not actually the title. No, definitely not. Neither phrase comes up at any point in any of these records. Not a factor, as, like, they seem just completely wholly made up. They don't even sound like Gucci Crew 2 songs necessarily. I don't know where that comes from. Hey, if anybody knows, if you know out there, if there's some kind of online only single or something that came out, you know, on emusic.com or mp3.com, like, let me know. I'd love to hear it. Maybe it's just been erased from history, but I don't think so. If anything, I suspect maybe they were thinking of these singles I'm talking about now and just didn't know what they were and made some crap up. So here we go. So that's Shake Your Hips in the Wind. This came out in 1994. And again, I'll play some clips of it, but that's not the end. 1996 now. Slip Slide Ride. Again, from the title, you know what this is about. You know the style. Fast-paced dance song, in the clubs kind of song. They got girls singing the hook, Slip Slide Ride. This is the one where Joe Boogie does almost all the rapping. 240 Shorty has a quick verse at the end. But, I mean, it's another Gucci Crew 2 song. Again, well done. And it's not on this 12-inch single. But if you look at the CD single on the back, it says, this is taken from the upcoming album, Gucci 96. The upcoming Gucci Crew 2 album, Gucci 96. That album never happened. It doesn't exist. but clearly there was intentions for it. Maybe it was even fully recorded and completed. This was going to be the lead single, or maybe Shake Your Hips in the Wind was going to be on that album, maybe, probably. But it was 2 years earlier, so who knows. But anyway, so this is the last Gucci Crew 2 record at all on wax, on any kind of physical release, as far as I know, and I'm pretty confident. Like, I've looked over the years, I'm pretty sure I would know. Again, I don't know, maybe they released like a really independent CD that they kind of gave out at shows locally or something, but that's about it. This is really kind of the end on wax, but it's not the end of the Gucci Crew 2 history. They've continued to put out music, and still to this day, I actually was like just Googling them right before I turned on the cameras just to see what they're up to. They got new stuff in 2023. It's kind of diverse. It's kind of hard to find because they kind of change the way they write their name. Like sometimes it's Gucci Crew 2 the classic way, sometimes it's the number 2, sometimes it's under Cleveland Bell, who is 240 Shorty's real name. He just puts it as himself. Like if you look at Discogs, there's like one 2019 song by Cleveland Bell, and you think, oh, that's all they've done. But no, there's actually a whole bunch of stuff, and they're on different sites. Like if you go to Spotify, there'll be like one song, and it'll be like GCT, and there'll be another song, and it'll just be like Light Borders. It'll be on his Instagram. So it's all split up, but there's a whole bunch of songs. Again, Light Borders being Joe Boogie. It's still Joe Boogie. So Joe Boogie got on in 1992 on that single, and to 2023, they're still the Gucci Crew 2. It's him and 240. They're the two. Obviously, on the classic original albums, is 240 and MCV. But then once that split happens, somewhere in 90 to 92, MCV is out, Joe Boogie's in. It's always Joe Boogie, and they're good. They're cool. If you like the Gucci Crew 2, definitely seek out all their online stuff. You'll probably enjoy and get a kick out of it. You know, like if you're an old school fan, you thought like, oh, they never did anything after G4. No, they did. They did a lot. They got records out. They got MP3s out. They got YouTube videos out. There's all kinds of stuff. So it's worth checking out. They don't have, I'm pretty sure, songs called Erase Your Face and Spike and the Funky Bunch. And I'm pretty sure they never did kids' birthday parties as the Goofy Crew 2. But I'm telling you, Wikipedia definitely doesn't know about these singles. They definitely don't know about any of the MP3 stuff. And they don't even seem too terribly clear on the Joe Boogie thing, which, to be fair, is confusing. And yes, he's the guy, like, he's not credited on this record, but that's him, for sure. No doubt, no question. Joe Boogie, I'm telling you. That's it. I've spoken too long. Let's go. Gucci Crew 2, sound clips, and we're out. Now you know the history.
Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Cream.
with it flow. I see the dance in the club and the ride some more. Now here we go. Put your feet firm on the floor. Ladies been before, make the hand touch his toe. Now fellas, now he's up. So in the back and work that fat thing just like that. Don't be ashamed with your baby boy. I brought talk room from the hotel room. Now you can ride, and don't you stop.